That was just to catch the noise print.
Oh, okay.
I feel like people that listen to this podcast probably sick of me explaining, oh, I got to catch the noise print or whatever.
The noise print?
Yes. Gotta get 5 seconds of just the background. So I can go back in there and take it out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's how the software just like eliminates all that?
Yeah, to clean it up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm here with Kevin Vinci in your house. Thank you again for inviting me back. I feel I was very thankful to be invited over the first time, but I feel like it means something to get invited a second time because that means I didn't screw up too much the first time.
Likewise. Well, I guess as my third time being a guest on the podcast, I feel the same way. It's like, oh, I haven't said anything too crazy yet, or I guess I'm at least mildly interesting to the point where you'll record my conversations. So,
and our last podcast here was rudely interrupted by Nick Hartman. I'm just saying that because I know that like he'll be like, oh, I said I wouldn't have to. I'm glad that he came. Yeah. I'm glad that we had that conversation.
That was awesome. Yeah.
And I tried to have a conversation with him in Denver.
Said that, yeah. Or
but it never happened.
Really?
It never went down.
You guys are just in vacation mode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that was the genesis of this podcast. Was we've gone to different places since the last podcast that we've done. I know for sure you went to Canada for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I went out west a couple of times.
A couple times?
Yeah. I this year I went out to San Diego, Los Angeles, Colorado, and then actually when I got back from Colorado, I had to turn around and get on a plane to go to Boston.
Oh, okay. I think you were telling me a little bit about that because you're traveling a lot for work, right?
Yeah, a lot of travel for work. So, and it's always nice to see new places because I guess you kind of get to step out of your routine and you get to have that beginner's mind. Yeah, which I like.
It's always funny because I do value a routine. But then, like, when you do travel, it's, like, kind of, like, you're just ripped out of it. And as much as you want to try to keep a routine, you're just, like, completely ripped out of it. And it does give you, like, that new sense of perspective that maybe makes it easier to get back into a routine or also makes it also, like, you're just, like, less willing to get into the routine. Gives you more resistance to get back into it. I don't know. But
yeah, same for me. Getting as much routine as possible allows me to live on autopilot, and that saves so much energy for me to deploy on things that demand a lot of focus.
That's an interesting perspective on being on autopilot, because a lot of people would look at that as almost like too mundane or monotonous or not living their life to the fullest or something, but you see it as like helping productivity. I feel momentum when I'm in line with my routine and I've been doing it for weeks on end. I just feel so much momentum, and it allows me to kind of get deeper into moments, whether it be with someone I'm having a conversation with, writing jokes, thinking about what I want to do with the podcast or whatever. It gives me the opportunity to go deeper because all the other stuff is taken care of automatically in the background. So that's a good way to put it, actually.
But when I go and travel, and like you said, I think it's funny you said that no matter how hard you try, it's so difficult to carry that routine on the road. Yeah. And for me, I feel like that has in the past year, all the travel that I've done, this is, for me, has been the most travel I've done in a year. And I've realized that I have become more comfortable with the idea of my routine being thrown out the door.
Which is important, too, because that can be stressful for some people, especially if you're very routine-oriented.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what I carry with me now. It's like, it's okay. And then that gives me enough space to revisit the routine and make adjustments.
kind of like recharge a little bit too.
Yeah,
because you do have to have seasons of some sort. Like you can't always be in a routine. I feel like, I mean, you can hypothetically, but like you have to have something that breaks it. You know, a fresh experience, new inspiration, something like that. And I think that's what makes travel very valuable, for sure.
I'm trying to talk myself into the value of seasons, literal, as we get colder here, heading into the fall, or we're in the dead middle of fall, heading into winter. And I don't know, growing up, I guess it's always been one of those things. It's kind of like a wham moment, right?
Yeah.
From summer to things getting colder.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm trying to trick myself, and I'm trying to look at the positive of the shift of my environment. Have you ever thought of like our seasons here in Northeast Ohio?
Yeah, I've always, I guess, maybe had the same type of mentality. Like winter comes around, it's kind of a downer. You're gonna have shorter days. Like you gotta be stuck inside more. But I do see some value in it. Number one, like it makes you appreciate the summer that much more because like in the dead of summer, it's so easy to like start complaining about the heat and then find yourself stuck inside all the time if you have air conditioning. Like it's almost like the same type of thing that we fault winter with. It's like, oh, it's too hot, can't do it, can't be outside. Like, but I think that it gives you good perspective. Like, it kind of makes you value the different winter or the different seasons. Like, winter is like, I don't know, for a lot of people. Some people like winter, I guess. Like, if you're a winter sports type of person, but like, I guess a lot of people don't like winter. So then maybe that will make your summer that much better. But I do try to find some value in it. I'm not a big like skier or anything like that, but I do think it's cool like to like have the possibility to like go skiing or like you know, if you're like kids like to go sledding. Like I'm sure we could go sledding too. It might be kind of funny to see us.
I want to do that.
Really?
Yeah, there's this big sled hill down the street from where I'm at.
And let's go sledding. Let's do it.
And they have like a fire pit, like shelter area. And for some reason, I am making this up in my own head, but they're selling hot chocolate there.
Of course, yeah.
So to me, I guess I have a big thermos. We could fill it up with hot chocolate.
A little bit of whiskey in there. We're set.
But I don't know if you want to mix alcohol with this hill. This hill, it's treacherous, man.
Really?
It's crazy. It's insane.
You have to check this hill out.
But we'll check it out, and then maybe we'll get a group of people to go out there and go sledding.
That would actually be kind of cool. I guess you always do associate it as like a kid's activity, but why can't we go sledding as adults?
Yeah, that would be fun.
Members of society, we can go sledding.
Just moving down a hill with cold air blowing in your face.
We used to have Malone College here in Canton used to have a really nice sled hill. And it was like one of those things where it was like kind of trespassing, but like they would let people get away with it. And then they like tried to put up a sign that was like people can't sled here, and then they started like enforcing it at a certain time so you could get away with it like in the afternoon, and then like you could at night. And then recently they did a big construction project, and like the hill was essentially gone.
Really?
Yeah, they like tiered it off because I think it's like I actually haven't been there since, but I think there's like some football fields or something there.
Wait, was that the hill like that you could see from the highway?
Yeah.
I think I've passed it numerous times.
Yeah, it's a cool point. It's also like it's like a good overlook point for Canton. Like it's one of the higher elevation points in this area. Nice. But yeah, it was a sweet place to go sledding. I remember one time there, like the one side of the hill, like you could go all the way almost to the fence, and at the fence is like 15 feet away from the highway. And I remember somebody we were going with, they were sledding all the way down the hill, and then they actually like got stuck in the fence because they like it was just a loose chain link fence. And they actually like went underneath the fence.
Gotcha. But that's hilarious. That's a lot of speed.
Yeah.
To push the fence up like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, you gotta get some serious speed.
Yeah, so we'll have to check that out. And when you just trying to think of things to do outside when it's cold, I think is important. Yeah. I know you and we went on a hike, Blue Hen Fall or something like that.
Valley, yeah.
And that was very cold. But I'm very glad that we did that. and being out there, and I also feel like there's a little bit of advantage of it being cold and people not liking it because there's less people outside.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just you and
peaceful.
whoever you're with.
Yeah. And it is cool being out there in the woods like when it's like that because it's like dead silent. You know, you get a little bit of wind, the occasional bird, but like it's not like in the summer where you can hear lots of birds and other people. Cars, yeah. Which I don't know, maybe there's still, I don't even know. But yeah, it's just, it seems much more quiet and peaceful.
Yes.
But I was talking to, actually last night, went out to dinner with a group of friends, and one of the guys, he's from India originally, and he was showing me like a bunch of pictures that him and his buddies took in the fall, because like he was like, we don't get colors like this in India. Like it stays green, I guess, or at least in his specific part of India, because I'm sure there's lots of different ecosystems, but like he was saying we don't get the colors. And it was like, he was blown away by like just all the different colors of the trees. And it's something that we take for granted having it every year, but
well, that's what I noticed getting back from Colorado and then from Boston. When I flew in and I drove home, I was blown away by the colors that we have. And I know New England, they're known for like their leaves changing. I think more so Maine. But to me, you know, I spent a lot of time outside in Colorado. It's beautiful there. I didn't spend that much time out in Massachusetts. I was in, you know, an urban environment, but nothing really stood out to me when it came to like the leaves changing. But when I got here and on the way back, I was blown away of how vibrant our colors are.
Yeah. And give it enough time, the leaves would be blown away too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm happy I'm not a homeowner because I don't have to pick up the leaves.
That's a very valid point. That's actually the funny reason why, if you look at my property, you will not see any trees like that drop a lot of leaves. I had this little cherry blossom tree, but none of the other trees, I refuse. I'm not going to plant any maples or oaks or anything.
I heard that leaves are actually good to be on the ground.
Just to leave them there?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So I don't know why. Is it a legal thing that we have to get the leaves off the ground?
Not in this neighborhood. Luckily, I don't really have like an association or anything like that. But I think it might just be more of a maintenance thing. I don't know. I guess people just want to like pick up their leaves.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it makes sense why people do it because everyone else is doing it, and if you're with a homeowner association, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But what did that tree do before there was a neighborhood here?
It was dropping leaves. But it's funny because I was actually thinking about this very thing. It's like if you take all the leaves, because essentially like the trees are taking nutrients from the soil, and part of that is going into creating leaves, right? And they drop the leaves, and in a forest or a natural situation, the leaves are going to decompose and add back to the soil, right? But in an urban environment or wherever, we're taking these leaves and taking them to a landfill, or maybe some people are burning them or composting them. But like it's like almost like you're just taking the nutrients out of the soil, like
for sure.
So I'm curious if there's like any long-term effects of that. But it's crazy how aesthetic influences all of that because even like grass, like I was reading how it's like good to leave like a section of your grass longer.
Really?
Yeah, because it's actually better for animals. Like it creates like a little ecosystem, like because in nature you're not going to see grass being all like flat and super trimmed. So yeah, it was this thing about like having meadows, like leaving like little meadows in your yard, so that like chipmunks or whatever would have like a little bit of a habitat.
That makes me think of, I'm not sure if it was Colorado or somewhere up here, but there was they made a on-ramp, the little like triangle, that patch triangle of grass. They made it a meadow. And like there was a sign there that was saying that this is like a habitat.
Oh wow, like a protected area or something.
Yes.
Was it like a island, like a grass island almost surrounded by road?
Well, so you're getting on the on-ramp to the highway. So imagine, I don't think this would be a good example here, but getting onto a highway where there's like a patch of grass and like in the form of a triangle. Right, and that triangle is a sanctuary.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's good.
I don't know if that is good because are you incentivizing like deer to come hang out or like raccoons and like crossing the road or whatever?
Yeah. Then it just creates a whole can of worms, and you're going to have to create an animal crossing or like a bridge for them. Yeah. But at least they're trying. At least there's some element of consciousness for the animals. I feel like that's important.
How was Canada? I've been to Niagara Falls, and I'm not sure if we can consider that Canada.
Depends on which side of Canada.
Well, I went to the Canadian side, but I felt like it was just so. It was just an extension of Buffalo.
Like so you just went just far enough to be like, I'm in Canada.
Yes, exactly. But where did you go?
So I went to, I'm probably saying it wrong, La Vérendrye, I think is how it's pronounced in French. But it's a nature reserve in Quebec. It was a 6-7 hour drive from Toronto. So, but if you were to go due north, because I had to go straight east for a little while. So I think if you were to go due north from like Maine or something, it might be like 3 or 4 hours from the border. So it's decent. It's a decent way up there. But yeah, it's a nature reserve, and the trip kind of had 2 legs. But the first leg of it was this solo camping adventure that I went on, and I went up there and I camped. I think I got there Monday evening. And I stayed until Friday. I went back to Toronto and I picked up my girlfriend, and then we spent the weekend in Toronto. So yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it was like 4 days, 5 nights, essentially.
And I know that we talked a little bit before you took off, but it was kind of this vibe from people, friends, family, that kept asking you why. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you going?
Yes. And it made me almost question myself, why am I doing this? But I like solo traveling. I've done solo trips before. I think it puts you in a unique place, because just as traveling will put you in a unique place, traveling solo puts you in a unique place, because like you're more apt to meet people. You're more apt to like sit down and have breakfast with some stranger that you're staying in a hostel with, as opposed to like having breakfast with your people, or like you're just, it puts you in this I don't know, like a place of discomfort maybe, where you're definitely not comfortable. You know what I mean? You're not going out to breakfast with your best friends and hanging out. Like, you're in this sense of like, I'm in it right now. Like, I'm in it. So I think it's really cool to travel solo for that reason. But then to take it to the next step and camp solo, that was something that I'd been wanting to do for a little while. I mean, I like a lot of people in this generation, I've read Into the Wild. I don't know, are you familiar with that book?
No.
You should check it out. It's a really cool book. It's just about this guy that is pretty much fed up with society, and he just takes off. And I think at one point he like burns his money, and he like ditches his car in the desert or something like that. He was really far out there, like really trying to experience this to the max. But it's like just that that romanticized idea of just like taking off and going into nature and going off and being by yourself and like thriving off of that. And I guess it's like I've always had that romanticized idea of doing that. So I finally got to do it to a larger scale, going to Canada, and it was really sweet, but it had its challenges. It was very challenging at first, because so essentially I don't even know where to start, to be honest. So I got there, and it took me a little longer to get there than I thought. So my original plan was to get there in the early afternoon, and then like have all day to kind of scope things out and find a campground. Because when I researched the park, the reserve beforehand, most of the information was all in French, and there was like PDFs that were translated to English, but there wasn't a whole lot of thorough information in English. So because Quebec speaks French, that's like their regional language. So all the road signs are in French. Everything's in French. So I got there. It was like I was kind of in a crunch for time because I only had a couple hours till dawn. Or till dusk, until sundown. So I was kind of like in crunch mode. I needed to find a camp and then also get things set up. So I found a couple campgrounds, and there was people there, and there was also signs, and I had a Google Translate app,
but it didn't really work all that well for some of the signs. So I was trying to figure out what the signs meant, and I kind of thought that it meant that you had to pay for these like particular campgrounds, and I was trying to find like something because I knew there was like primitive campgrounds that you didn't have to pay with. So I was like driving around trying to find a primitive campground, and I ended up just going in too much too quick. So I drove down this road that was like, it was kind of like a logging road. I think there was actually signs that were like for logging trucks, and you could see like sections that they just like cleared out the forest. So like, you know, it's pretty far up there because they're like, it's like a logging section of this forest. And so I actually ended up finding this little inlet of trees where there was no trees. And I just drove in there, and it was like off of the main road by probably like 10 miles. So there's like the main road that goes all the way through the park, and then I took a small little gravel road about 10 or 15 miles off of the main road, and then there's this little inlet off of that road. So it was really far out there and really remote and secluded. And I got there, and it was like right as night was coming, and I was trying to hang my bear bag, which if you've never done camping like that before, you need to tie up all your food and anything that smells, gum, deodorant, toothpaste, all of it. Like, it all has to get tied up in a bag, and then you have to hang it, which is normally not a big deal, like if you're in a place that's like has accommodations for that. But this was like a little inlet from like that was logged, so there was no big trees because all the big trees were taken out, unless I like went into the forest a little while, and then I'd probably find a big enough tree to hang it. And at this point I was kind of on edge, and I'm, you know, I love nature, but I wasn't like acclimated to it. So I was just like, all right, I'm not gonna hang the bear bag tonight. Like, I'm just gonna have to like do this thing. So I made a fire, and I was just out there, and night comes, and it got real quick. And I kind of got, it was intimidating, you know, because like I'm pretty nature savvy, but like I'm not like a seasoned backpacker. So I had just enough experience, I had just enough research that I knew I wasn't like getting myself into like something that was like a really dangerous situation, but I wasn't at the same time prepared to be like off the grid that night, if that makes any sense. So nightfall comes, and I go to sleep, and I wake up, and I thought that it was like, okay, you know, I made it through the first night. It was still dark, but I was like, okay, it's probably just early in the morning. I look at the phone, and it was like just after midnight. So I had like made it. Like, I slept like 3 hours, and I was wide awake. Like at this point, adrenaline was surging through me. The fire was out, because at this point, the first night I was like sleeping in my car. I had like a car camp set up, and I realized that like I wasn't ready in this particular moment to do it. So
now, were you with your car, or were you away from it?
I was in the car the first night. Yeah.
So, well, no, I meant the second night. Oh no, well, we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the first night I had like a bug net type of thing, so I could have like some fresh air, and I had like a cool little setup in the car. But yeah, so the fire was out. It was like pitch black. I remember I stepped out of the car to just like survey the situation. I remember like the thing I remember most was like the stars were just like super vivid, like more vivid than I've ever seen. And it was like so much so everything all at once was just like overwhelming. Like I was like, I can't do this tonight. So I got back in the car, and I drove all the way down this down the gravel road. And I remember passing like a tourist information station. So like I just went back there. It was about a 30-minute drive or something. I go back to this tourist information station. I just popped in their parking lot, and I just like crashed for the rest of the night. So that was like my introduction to this whole experience.
Why did you head to the tourist? Did you not feel comfortable?
I was just like, I felt at this point, my mistake was I went too much too soon. You know, I just like I jumped in the deep ends. You know what I mean? When I still should have had my floaties on in the shallow end. So I went to the tourist station because it was like I knew it was a parking lot where I could just crash, and you know no one would bother me. So yeah, that was the first night. And then eventually I woke up, I got my bearings, I like kind of was able to like scout out the area in daylight, and I found a campground that was what I was looking for, and it was off to my own. It was like secluded, but it wasn't like so far out there that I was like kind of scared. So that was like my first little taste of the adventure. But in hindsight, it was very valuable because it kind of gave me some insight into my life. Because it was like, I tend to be someone that likes to just jump into things head first. Like, I don't know. I've just always worked well under pressure and just kind of putting myself, just going in head first. But at the same rate, the flip side to that is preparation is super important. And if you're going to just go in and just go balls deep, for lack of a better expression, you need to have some element of preparation. Like, even if it's just the mental preparation aside from like your gear and outfitting. So it was kind of a perfect metaphor to life because I felt like at that point, like, I was doing that a lot in my own life, just like not allowing myself to be adequately like prepared for things that I was taking on. So it kind of like just resonated throughout all of me. But yeah, it was cool.
So when you're out in the wilderness and you're alone, the things that you didn't prepare for, it becomes polarizing. It's brought to the surface at such extreme levels, what I'm hearing.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think in that particular situation, one of the big things was the fact that I wasn't able to hang a bear bag. So I was like sleeping with my food, which in hindsight ended up not being such a big deal because I came to realize that like the bear, I think in that particular part of the year, like the bears weren't super active, and it wasn't really, it's not like if you go camping in Yellowstone where like there's signs that are like, if you do not follow bear safety, you will get mauled by a grizzly or something like that. You know what I mean? It's more like you need to do it because it's precautionary, but it's not like like a guarantee that a bear is going to come.
Was there grizzly in
just black bears. Just black bears. So I mean, they'll still get into your car, and there's stories of black bears like messing with people, but generally they'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
So, and I did have bear mace with me, but that was something that I learned throughout the course of this trip. So the very first night, in my mind, I was thinking like, like your imagination's running wild, right? And I was just thinking like bears, like they're, like I wasn't even hanging the bear bag, so that was kind of like a crucial thing. And also just not being familiar with the place because like, I'm not really easily spooked per se, but just the fact of like going to this part of the world that is unfamiliar and not having a lot of time to acclimate to it.
Yeah.
I was only there for a couple hours of daylight. It was just all of it was, there needed to be more preparation. Because after the first night, I felt so much better. And so like the next 2 nights I stayed at a campground it was kind of close to the highway, like, but it was still secluded. And then the last two, that was the next night. But then the last 2 nights I actually went to this place that was like much further north. And it was off of, it was called Bay du Til, like which is the bay, like Tay Bill or Bay du Til, so like Til Bay, I guess is what it would be considered. But it was very secluded. It was probably about the same amount of a drive out there, about 15-20 miles from like the main road, and it was like very secluded. But at the same rate, I felt much more comfortable at that point, so I was able to like comfortably be out there after I had time to acclimate.
Well, you go into a different country that speaks a different language.
Mm-hmm.
How is your French?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
nay.
Yeah, exactly.
So a different language that you don't speak in a different environment that is secluded.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people realize how in society how insulated we are with noise from streets, from people, from machinery, whatever. I mean, even in the country, right? It's still civilization.
Mm-hmm.
But you went outside of that.
Yeah.
You stepped outside of civilization. you stepped outside of the ability to communicate with people, the local people.
Yeah.
You stepped outside of your own country. What were you hoping to gain from doing that?
Just new perspective. I don't know. Hearing it put back like the way you just phrased it, it's like, wow, this dude's insane. Like who in there, like why would somebody do this? And looking back, it was kind of, it was very bold, and some people might say it was, stupid or whatever. But I found great value in that because I was trying to step outside of my comfort zone primarily, and then second of all, find a new perspective. Just like see, what is this like? What is this reality like? It's not very often that you can be off the grid, no cell phone service, in a place that is so utterly foreign. And how are you going to respond? How are you going to behave in that situation? Like, what kind of clarity will that bring you? Because, like, amidst all of the, chaos that this situation might present, there's got to be some element of clarity that will present itself, if you allow it to. Which I ended up getting some clarity. I was brought to some revelations, which was cool. Because, like, there is none of the cultural familiarities, I guess, that you can just like lean on and depend on. So like even I went to at one point to just like refuel. There was a little service station, the only like little city in the middle of it, which was called La Domaine. And there was a gas station, there was a restaurant, and I think there was like a health center, like not quite a hospital, but just some kind of like emergency health center. And like I went in there and I was like talking with some of the people because they spoke English too, but like it was like the same thing. It was like not like oh, I'm just gonna stop at Starbucks real quick and or like stop at McDonald's or something like that, because it's like everything is so far out and unfamiliar. It just puts you into that like game time. I don't know, I guess is how I would say it. So I thought it was cool. It's not something that I would have, in this particular situation, I think 4 days was just long enough. It's not something that I would have wanted to do for like an extended period of time, but yeah, it was good just to be alone with yourself and to really experience what that is like. Like, not a lot of us, including myself, really get that time to like be alone and secluded for multiple days at a time. Like to be alone with your own thoughts and your own with your own thoughts, essentially.
What was your relationship with time, with this idea of not being able to look up and see a clock on the wall, or not wait for the menu at the local restaurant to move from lunch to dinner?
Yeah, it was cool. It took me about a day or two to detox from this desire to like have my phone, because it was funny, even though I knew there was no service and everybody that normally I'd be in communication with knew that I was not going to be in communication for a couple of days, I still had this like this felt obligation to like check my phone. You know what I mean? It's like that feeling we all get if you haven't checked your phone in an hour. Like, oh, did I miss something? Did my mom call me? Like, what am I missing out on? And it took me about a day or so, maybe a little over a day, to like kind of get that out of my like the back of my minds, like to just like let it go. And it was cool because like it's much more freeing. Also, I guess number one, I'll say it puts you in tune with nature a lot more, because over the course of a couple of days I started acclimating myself to like sunrise and sunset. So like I don't even know some days like what time I went to bed, because like I didn't really pay attention, but it was probably a lot more closely correlated with sundown than I would here, being at home. And then I probably was waking up much earlier, closer to sunrise, because if anybody's ever been camping, it's kind of hard to sleep outside when the sun comes up, because it just kind of, you wake up with nature usually. But it definitely just put me in more of a natural state, I think, where I was like less aware of, oh, it's noon, so I guess it's about lunchtime, or, oh, it's 7 o'clock, so that means this or that. It was just more like on a natural scale, I guess.
My grandfather, his brother just passed away a few months back, and he was 95 years old and World War II veteran.
Sorry to hear that.
Very prominent figure in our community at large, not just my family, but just Youngstown community at large. And he led a full life, and at the end of his life, he had this situation that we never heard of before, and the disorder is sundowners. So I've never heard of this before, but what would happen to him is when he was getting towards the end of his life and we kind of knew where things were heading, I didn't have a full conversation with him. This is what I hear from my grandpa and my grandma. They could have a full conversation with him during the daytime. He was coherent. He was there. But during the nighttime, he would start talking to people, and he would start talking to the wall, and he would start forgetting things, and he didn't know who he was or where he was at. And apparently that is a disorder called sundowners, where it's almost as if people have Alzheimer's when it's nighttime.
Wow.
So when you look at his example, right, that's just one example of how much of an impact light makes on our brains.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. Especially the sun. Like, being out in the sun is so much different than being in artificial light, I think. I think that's why, sunlight is always, like, natural light is always, like, held as such a high standard, like either in a workplace or like when like in homes or something like that. I think the sun is so important.
And that's what I told my grandma when she was telling me this. I was like, how crazy is it that he was sane in the daytime with natural light, which means that because a star that's billions of miles away that's exploding,
yeah,
that energy is what makes him him.
Yeah.
And keeps him sane.
So at what point did he start having these symptoms? I've never heard of this before. Like, this is fascinating.
It was towards the end of his life. The last 6 months or so.
Oh, so this wasn't like an ongoing.
No, this wasn't something that he had all the time, but to me it was just an example of, and I'm glad that most people don't deal with it, right?
Yeah.
But it just gives an example of how light impacts us.
I wonder if it's like a form of Alzheimer's or like a form of like dementia or something.
It is. It is
actually
for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I looked it up. It is a disorder. But I've been thinking more and more about night and day, both from a practical, I kind of hesitate to use that language, but from a practical point of view, and then also from a metaphorical point of view, because from information, I think Matthew Walker, I think he's a neuroscientist that studies sleep. He was on Joe Rogan Experience. He was on Dr. Rhonda Patrick. I think he was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. But he talks about how natural light in the morning, it actually releases chemicals in your brain that kicks in the circadian rhythm. And what happens is about 16 hours later after that kicks in, your brain starts producing melatonin. Yeah.
Oh.
And so the circadian rhythm is kind of like your internal clock.
Yeah.
And then once it starts getting darker, your brain releases these chemicals that put you to sleep. And to me, that's been huge. Natural light in the morning has been huge. It's a game changer. But so is sleep, right? Sleep is a game changer. I mean, when you think about it, we're so impressed with our phones. When our phones are dying, we plug it into a wall and it has to sit in that wall for some time period or whatever. But for us, for humans, for animals, when after a day of engaging with the world, we lay down in one spot and just close our eyes, and then 8 hours or so later, we open them and we are rebuilt,
recharged. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
That's wild. It's something we just take for granted, you know, like.
It's so strange. I mean, and I don't mean strange in a bad way. It's almost like a miracle because your body is. So, there's so much cell damage that's happening throughout the day of just engaging with life, walking, moving, thinking. You know, there's brain cells that have to be shifted in certain directions, and that all happens when you go offline at night.
Yeah, that is crazy when you think about it like that. And also, like when you tie it together with dreaming and like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Like, how your body paralyzes itself so that you can sleep. That's crazy. Like, I don't know if you've ever woken up during sleep paralysis.
I haven't. Have you?
It's spooky, yeah. It's happened. Actually, for some reason, the past couple of weeks, I've been having very vivid dreams. And it happened just, like, within the past week. And, it like, I don't know, it was just very, very weird, like, to feel like that. Because it's, like, almost like you're still kind of sleeping, so, like, you're still, like, kind of questioning, like, oh, is this reality? Like, type of deal. But yeah, like the fact that your body is just like, all right, I'm gonna lay here for 8 hours or so and just paralyze myself, and we're just gonna repair everything. Like, that's wild.
I've heard from people that have woke up in sleep paralysis, and they told me it was one of the most terrifying things that they've ever experienced.
It is. It's happened to me before, so I wasn't like I knew like that's like. This is what it is. And it wasn't like, there's also night terrors, which I didn't have a night terror at this particular time, but I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that's like when you wake up during sleep paralysis, and then there's always like, there's a few really common experiences. There's always like, you know, some people have like a shadowy figure that they see, or like there's this feeling of like that feeling that someone's in the room with you type of thing. And that's a whole nother type of thing. But I guess compared to that, waking up when your body can't move isn't as terrifying, I guess. It sounds terrifying, but like if you've experienced it before. While we're on the topic of dreams, I think it's fascinating because like one little hack I learned a little while ago is if you have like a very small amount of alcohol before you go to sleep, it makes you dream more vividly. So like I guess kind of akin to like a nightcap, right? So like if you have just like maybe like a quarter of a glass of wine or, you know, something like that. Like, not enough to intoxicate you or anything like that, but enough to, I don't know what's the biological reason, but it makes you dream more vividly. So every once in a while I do that, just kind of, I don't know, just for kicks, I guess.
Is this what you attest to your recent vivid dreams?
Maybe. The most recent one, I think it wasn't on purpose. I think I had just like, I'd been out that night. Went out with friends and my girlfriend or something. There was, you know, I had had some drinks, but I don't think it was that particular time. It wasn't like purposeful, like, oh, I want to try to dream tonight. I think it just kind of happened. But yeah, it was pretty spooky. Yeah.
I feel like I have underestimated dreams for most of my life. And it hasn't been until recently where I wake up and I have these dreams, or I can remember the dream, and what I'll do is I'll write down what I can remember of that dream. And usually when I do that, when I start jotting down something, that more and more comes out.
Yeah.
More of the memory of the dream comes out. But then on top of that, I look at that as data.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is... Before, most of my life, I look at, just dreaming. Kind of like throw my hands up. Oh, yeah, it was dreaming, right?
Yeah.
And we use that as sarcasm today. We look at someone who has seemingly outrageous ideas of the future.
Okay. Yeah.
We call them dreamers,
mm-hmm.
right? I don't know who who would say this now, but that saying "in your dreams," right? Like that. I don't know who would say that now,
but that classic expression.
Yeah, but so like that mentality about dreams, but when I write them down, right, and I'm looking at them and I'm analyzing them, this is data that I'm pulling from my subconscious.
Yeah.
And my subconscious exists in the same realm of experience as my consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So right now I'm saying that this is real. Like our conversation, I went to Kevin's house today.
Yeah.
Right? That's real. I was conscious of it.
Yeah.
Right? And now when I go to sleep and I have these dreams and I get that information, I look at that information just as valid as the information that I'm obtaining from you.
Yeah. It can be valuable. I think I read somewhere that like there's a certain element of dreams that is nonsense, but there is also a certain element that does relate to like stress or deep down desires or like just processing situations. So I think that's a good way to put it. It is data. It's very, very important. And dream journaling is really fascinating. I used to be a lot better with it. I took a class my freshman year in college, and one of the things that the professor did was encourage us to dream journal. And I think it might have been a project. We had to like journal our dreams for like 2 weeks or something like that. But it was a habit that I carried on for a little while. And the idea is if you dream journal, it improves your dream recall to the point that if you can get so good at it, build that muscle so much, you can actually have lucid dreams much more frequently, which is like when you're aware that you're in the dream, right? It's like that inception moment that like when you are aware that I am dreaming right now and I can influence it. Because I don't know if you've ever had any experience with that.
I have, yes.
Where you can like influence your dream?
Yeah, and usually it involves me like flying a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the one time, it was more frequent when I was younger that I would lucid dream, and I would lucid dream before I even knew what lucid dreaming was.
Oh, really?
I just knew that I was in a dream. But there was this one time where I was in a lucid dream, and I knew I was dreaming, and then I woke up. And then when I woke up, I also knew I was in another lucid dream.
Wait, so you woke up in the dream and you were still dreaming? Wow.
Yeah.
That's like some serious inception.
Yeah, it was.
Right there.
Yeah, and this was when I was really, really young. I was probably I think I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was before I knew what lucid dreaming was. But like I would have been able to tell you, oh yeah, I knew I was dreaming in this dream.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of people work really hard to get to that point.
But as I've gotten older, I've lost that. I've lost that ability to do that. And I'm not so sure. I've heard of techniques to be able to train to do that.
Yeah.
And to me, me personally, my mind is always constantly going. It's always moving. So to me, to be aware of me being in a dream, I don't want any part of it.
Okay.
You're
just like, let me sleep. Yeah. Let me have my peace for these 8 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I guess yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because I guess it can be off-putting, like if you wake up in the middle of the night from a dream, and even if it's not like necessarily a nightmare, like a spooky dream, it can just kind of like really just kind of set you off on like I don't know, just anytime I've woke up in the middle of the night because of a dream, it's always just kind of put me in this state of being spooked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if it wasn't, like last night would be a perfect example. For some reason I woke up, and I think maybe daylight savings had something to do with it. Well, actually maybe not, because I woke up before my alarm. But I just woke up in the middle of the night from a dream, and it wasn't necessarily a bad dream. It's just like, it just threw me. Like it just kind of, it spooked me. And I remember I just kind of was like laying there for a while, like questioning existence and stuff like that, just from this dream that I had that I don't even remember what it was about at this point.
What was your relationship with existence the first night in Canada in the wilderness, and you wake up after 3 hours, and you look outside and you see the stars in a way you've never seen before?
It was just overwhelming, I would say, because it was funny because the rest of that trip, I was hoping that I would have another night of star viewing that I had that first night, because like they were so vivid, and part of it might have just been the fact that I had just woken up, and I was like in this heightened sense of arousal, if you will, that like everything seems so much brighter, kind of like what we were talking about earlier at breakfast. Like everything seems so much brighter, but then it's because you're like, oh, I was in a dark room, that's why.
Yeah.
But I think it might have been something. It was partially to that, but it was also just this like when you wake up abruptly and then you have this realization of like, oh, that's right, I decided it was a good idea to drive myself all the way out here into the wilderness and try to sleep. Like all of that at once just kind of like hit me, and it was very my experience with what was your original question? What was my experience of consciousness
or what was the relationship with the relationship of your existence when you saw the stars in such a vivid way?
I think it made me feel very, very small. I'd say because like all of a sudden like you're just in this vastness of what is the world, and then when you look up to the sky and you see the infinite world of stars and everything up there, it just kind of like made me feel very small, and at the time very vulnerable too, relating back to the whole like just being in the wilderness and just being in this place where like you feel like, you know, animals and, you know, whatever else, Sasquatch, aliens, all of it. Like this is when they come, you know what I mean, in this moment. Like, so it was kind of, I guess, yeah, that's how I would say. I just felt very, very small, and it's kind of a cool feeling. It's like standing on top of a mountain or an overlook point or something, like just seeing this vastness of the world in front of you. It's kind of cool to feel that, I guess, because you can be in your little house, you know, like your own piece of heaven, as they say, and like, you know, everything's under your control and it's also familiar, but like to step outside of that and to see that, oh wow, like I'm just like another player in this massive game, like it's kind of intimidating a little bit to just see that.
You look out and you see the universe in a way that's limited to us here because of light pollution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you kind of a glimpse of perspective of where you are in the larger picture of things.
Yeah.
So that made you vulnerable because it was such a unique feeling compared to what you're used to.
Yeah.
But then going from that, going through the vulnerability, going through this realization of, wow, the existence is much bigger than what I perceive on a daily basis. How does that tie into the next 3 days when you say you're with yourself and you have this solitude, and it actually goes into the vastness the other way? Well, so you look out, you know, one way and it's infinite, and then you have the solitude that you could turn it around. You're like turning the telescope, and then you look at you as a conscious being, and there's vastness there. And you said that you learned things.
That's a cool way to put it. Because I guess without even, I guess, explicitly realizing it, it was that same feeling of vastness that kind of gives you the freedom to just think and to just explore the inner workings of your own mind. But that needs to come. It's funny because the whole purpose of this, I was saying, was like an element of discomfort, right? But then in order for there to be growth, there needs to be a level of comfort. Like I remember the one campground I went to, there's this cool little hiking trail that I would go on. I think it was like the sign said it was like right around a 5 kilometer hiking trail. So it wasn't super far, but it was far enough that you could kind of get deep into the woods and feel like you're deep there. And it's like this feeling of once you get past like the natural paranoia of being an urban creature in a wilderness setting, it's like there's this sense of peace because like you realize that well, maybe not realize, but it kind of allows you to remove yourself from the influence of other people, I guess, because we all have an element of a facade that you create being in society, right? Like there's like this element of what you have to be, and then it's cool to kind of not only be in nature to be able to shed that, but also be by yourself and shed that. So you can entertain all these different ideas, or you can like really work through things and just see what kind of comes to the surface when you're not interacting with other people, like when you're not, I don't want to say burdened, but like when you're not like burdened with with like conversation, or when you're not like in the company of other people, it's like all of a sudden you will find like these different things that just kind of rise to the surface, like whether it's like something you've been thinking about, or like something like a decision like you've been trying to make, or even just like a feeling of like a state of being. It kind of allows it to happen. Like I just remember feeling like just a sense of like being, I don't know, like a sense of trueness to myself at one point, because it was like after I was there for a little while and I was like able to adjust, I almost felt like that, like I was thinking as myself, like truly. I'm not thinking because I'm influenced by a billboard I'm passing, or like an advertisement, or there wasn't any of that influence. It was all just like all the inner workings of myself, and that's what was coming out. It was kind of interesting to experience it.
When you say that it was like the real you, your authentic self, it makes me think of it was an organic you.
Yeah, which is funny too, because maybe saying the real me isn't the best way to put it, because I guess the real you depends on your situation, I guess, because like we're all like so influenced and dependent on our the situation, right? Like I feel like the situation dictates a lot of who we are.
Yes.
I think that's healthy to a certain extent. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like you're gonna act a certain way around your mom, and that's going to be different than how you act around your friends. And that doesn't mean that you acting, maybe a little more conservative around your mom is different than you acting a little more wild around your friends. It's just different elements of yourself. But I guess it's cool to see that organic element of yourself being stripped away from society, stripped away from the influence of other people, and just seeing like what that's like. Just being out there.
Is there anything revelatory that you would like to share with people, or is that something that you felt like you experienced, it's yours and you're just going to keep it that way?
I mean, I think there was certain things, certain parts that were like that, but one thing that really sparked from this trip was this desire as I moved forward. Before I go there, I like knew that I was on this verge of like kind of like a spiritual growth, because I desired like to kind of take myself to the next, not the next level, but you know what I mean, like to kind of elevate myself spiritually, and to just kind of like keep digging deeper and like finding purpose and finding true like happiness and satisfaction with like what I'm doing in my life and where my life is going, right? And I felt like that was all directly related to like spiritual growth. So that was kind of like an underlying current into this trip. And I had this realization that like there was things that I've done in my life that I was not happy with, or decisions that I had not been happy with, right? Or maybe it wasn't necessarily a decision that I wasn't happy with, but it was like how I carried that out. And then like there was a few specific instances of like how I handled things with other people, and it made me realize to have it like further cemented this desire to find peace with those, like within those situations. So it inspired, like it kind of started the spark of like creating peace with like my past, I guess. And not that I had like such like a troubled past or anything like that, but it was like there was things I'd done in my life that I was like, that wasn't cool. You know what I mean? The way I treated this person was not cool. And there was actually one individual, I'll keep it all private, but it was one individual I actually reached out to, and like I opened a conversation, a dialogue. And then there's like a couple other situations like that in the near future I feel like I will. And it was just like this desire to, like, as I move forward, I don't want to look back and feel any kind of unease or any kind of like regret regarding people. Like I want to have peace, you know what I mean? And I think it kind of really that was one of the biggest things that kind of came from the trip, was just like this desire to like make peace, like really try to find peace, like, and as I move forward, like to not be burdened by like things of the past, which is kind of hard to do because I mean I feel like most of us have decisions that we've made that we kind of regret, and some of them are you can't remedy, you know what I mean, like there's just some things that's how it happened, and like that's just kind of like something I have to live with. But I feel like at the same rate there's also like things that we've all done that maybe we can reach out to somebody and just like, you know, maybe just open a conversation and just find like a little bit of healing. And so that was a big part of it, I guess.
One of the themes with the guest of this podcast, as I review the podcast and listen back to what people say, I would say the top theme is this aspiration for peace.
And that's an indicator of the type of people you hang out with.
Yes. And I think it's very interesting the way that you're looking at peace and your revelation with peace is at a local level, because it can get you can get caught up in the grandiose romantic idea of world peace, and I don't have time to help out the guy down the street because I'm working for world peace.
Yeah.
Right, and that idea.
Yeah.
Of we need to do something bigger or whatever. But with you, it's one-on-one. It's right there. You have direct control over it, and it's the way you engage.
I feel like I've taken to heart a quote I saw somewhere online. It was like you can't change the world, but you can change somebody else's life, or, you know, something along the lines of that. Yeah. It might have been an inspirational post that you see in a high school locker room, but it was like, you know, like there's a few of those types of quotes that are out around, and I've always taken that to heart. This idea that like sometimes influencing one person is all that you can do in a given situation, or if like you can make one person's day better. It's kind of like the whole pay it forward philosophy. If you can make one person's day better, then you can effectively change the world, right? Like, because we're all a part of the world. So I guess it kind of relates to that. But and also I feel like a part of my bigger vision, because I do have like a feeling that like as my life unfolds, like that there is a plan for me, as like a lot of people, like we're like as everybody, there's a plan for all of us. But like I feel like for my own situation, I know that involves needing to feel like just a sense of groundedness and unity and peace. And so I guess that's kind of, it's like along the path to world peace, there also needs to be like the local peace. It's like Dr. Jordan Peterson's whole, you know, you can't go out and change the world if you have a dirty room, you know, like that type of thing. Like you got to take care, you got to clean the dirty laundry first. Like you got to handle things at home. So I guess it kind of relates to that.
I went to a restaurant in Boston, and I went in there with the intentions of being friendly to whoever's in there. And it just so happened that I got to the point where I was standing with the owner of the business talking about a quote in a picture that I saw in her restaurant.
and hearing about her and where she's from and how the business was going to close a week later. Right? And so I shared with her something that I felt like was important for her to hear, and I could see her face had the sense of ease on it when I shared it with her, and the sense of grace, if you will.
Okay.
And I walked out of there thinking to myself, I'm so glad that I wanted to go out and talk to somebody that I didn't know. And I was like, I want to keep doing that. I want to be patient with strangers.
Yeah.
And be there for them. And is there a level of healing with that? Because I've heard other people talk about healing, like, oh, we need healing. What does that mean? And I'm not trying to like attack the.
You're wrong.
I'm not, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, in that interaction with that woman, I felt like we both left healed, a little more healed.
Yeah.
Right. I felt very happy to have that encounter with her, and I felt like it made her day a little bit better. So what is that about? What is this healing that people need so much?
I feel like in today's day and age, that's a huge part of it. That personal interaction. Like, I feel like that's something that slowly we're slipping away from, just because, like, technology, or maybe that's a cop-out, maybe that's an excuse, but I feel like a lot of people today, we don't really interact with each other as much, like the general public. So I feel like that connection is so valuable. But there was definitely that was a reason why you were there. You know, like if you believe in, you know, like God or the universe putting you in a place in a specific situation for a specific reason, that might have been it. Like, just to have that conversation, and it feels so little, but it's like wild how a conversation like that can create so much positive momentum moving forward. Like you said, you gave her a sense of peace, so like who knows how that influenced her day moving forward. And
yeah.
Obviously it affected you enough that you're here sharing the story. Like, so it's kind of wild how just a small decision like that can create waves.
And it's this idea of engaging with people in the public.
Yeah.
That I agree. I feel like it's slipping away. It's so clunky right now to have a conversation with the barista. You know, today we got lunch at a great place. I loved it. Great food there. But I felt like the engagement with the person at the counter was clunky.
Just kind of like, here's your food.
But like, and I will be back to that place. I like it. Yeah. I'm gonna go back.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on anyone there.
But it's just kind of the nature of like today, like our society. I don't know. I saw a thing. I guess like a little counter of this is it showed a picture of like, it probably was like the 30s or 40s. There was a bunch of guys in business suits sitting on a train, or like maybe it was a subway in New York or something, and they were all reading the newspaper.
Yeah.
They were all sitting there and all just reading their own newspaper, and then it like was comparing that to like people saying like, oh, cell phones are destroying like the need for human interaction, when obviously way before that people were being antisocial in quotation marks on their own right. But I do think technology is playing a big part of that. Like overall, collectively, as a whole, I think our culture in America is becoming less interaction based. I don't know, like it's just so easy to get on your phone, and I feel like so to actively fight that and to be actively conscious of that, be like, I'm going to go into this restaurant and have a what did you say? You're like, I'm going to just be friendly, or like try to have a positive conversation. Like that is a very dangerous mindset right there. You know what I mean? Think if we all had that mindset. You know, think if we all just wanted to leave our house and like, I'm going to go out tonight and I'm going to have a friendly interaction with somebody else. That would be so profound. Like, that would be very profound. I think that's something that we should all take forward.
And the reverse of that, of the being so focused on our phone, it kind of takes us out of that ability to look up and look out and see where we are in relation to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so boiled into what we're concerned about.
Yeah. You mean as far as like you can dial up, like you can literally read a specific article or like read a specific opinion of what you want? Is that what you mean? Or like,
well, anything at all. I mean, you just look at the body language of someone on their phone. Does it seem open or does it seem short and closed?
Yeah, probably closed off.
And like that, I mean, I'm using my phone right now. We're using the phone to record the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's in a different context.
Yeah.
And it's like I used my phone to get to that restaurant
mm-hmm.
to have that conversation with those folks. So I'm not saying throw away your phone.
Can't. Yeah. Can't.
To me, I just think that we got to prioritize what's important. And to me, what's important is realizing that we are all connected.
Absolutely.
And we have all these things in our lives that makes it easier and easier to have an illusion of our own segregation.
It's like this quote I heard somewhere, and I can't ever forget it. It's like, we are all individual nodes of the same consciousness. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
Yeah, I said that on the podcast with the... their names are slipping me. It was in Lorraine. There were two priests.
Oh, okay. Was that the one who was like seminarians or something like that?
Yes. Episcopal priests.
That's right.
Two Episcopal priests.
Yeah.
And it's weird because now I sound like I'm being counterintuitive because we talked about looking internal and having that internal dialogue and learning so much from that, but then also being able to look out.
Yeah. Well, I think the value of the internal is kind of like this sleep concept, right? Like having to recharge, because we all have to have that element of like inwardness to really focus on what's important. You can't always be out and about and always like serving other people, because you have to replenish the well at some point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I think it's the duality of it all, because like we need to be able to have this time to like really inwardly reflect, and not that everybody's going to go take a nature retreat and go spend days by themselves in the woods, but like we all need to have some element of like recharging, whether that's just putting the phone down and going and sitting in a dark room and like just thinking or praying or meditating, or some people might find that in church, some people might find that on a run. But I think it's important.
Space.
Yeah.
I think space, and then having the ability to understand your relationship with space.
Yeah.
Both like in a practical sense and in a metaphorical sense, right? Because when you looked up at the stars, you realized I'm in space.
Yeah, we are actually in space, floating on a giant rock ball flying through the...
Yeah, and so is the sun, right? The sun is in space and it's exploding, and it's making our brains act in a specific way or whatever.
That's crazy. And when you think about everything, it all comes from the sun, right? It's all solar powered, right? So we eat food, whether or not we're eating plants directly from vegetables, if we're eating meat, but it's all influenced from the sun, right? Because the sun made the grass grow, which allowed the cow to eat, and then we ate the cow. So it's like all coming from the sun. So that's just so crazy.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity 2 weeks or last weekend. Yeah, so like a week ago, Balmer Wallace has a observatory, and they opened it up. It's only open to the public so many times a year, and they had it dialed into to Saturn. And you got to actually like look at Saturn through this telescope. And Saturn was, through the viewfinder is probably about the size of like, half the size of a penny or something. But just to see it with your own eyes, it was just so surreal because it's like this is floating out there. Yep. Like, just all the way out there. It's just here floating. And here we are. Here we are all this far away. And I don't know how it's relevant, but it's it's very profound. Space is important, understanding it.
Yes. And I think when you have so much exposure to input, whether it be music, whether it be information, whether it be visual, that takes up mental space. And it makes me feel at times claustrophobic. In the sense of I can't have enough space to start realizing things because everything's so. And this is a audio podcast, and I wanted to try to do this live. I forgot about it. I forgot about my tripod. But anyways,
like a video, live video.
Yeah, live on YouTube. But anyways, like for the listeners, I'm holding my face because I just feel like information just gets pushed into my face and I can't see anything.
Information overload.
Yeah.
Too much. Just sometimes there's too much. And that was the big value with this trip was like being in a place where you didn't even have the option to default to your phone. Because there was no service. Like you didn't even have that option. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is, like kind of claustrophobic almost, like what you were saying. Like just everything is available to us at all times. I can call my friend halfway across the world and talk, which is amazing. But like that at the same time, like too much of it.
Yeah. Balance.
Yes.
Balance. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for this conversation. I've already taken up. What are we at? We are at. Oh no. We still got it. We still got the audio. Yeah, we're at hours.
Over an hour.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Well, we covered some very... You asked me what I had for breakfast. That was very important.
Oh, did we ever talk about fasting?
I don't know. I don't think we got there.
Because I said I wanted to save it for the podcast.
Oh, that's right. We had too many big plans.
Oh my gosh. Well, tell me if you have enough time.
Yeah. Oh, I got time.
You said about a year before you went to Korea.
Oh yeah. So
you played around with.
Well, I went to Korea last summer, so this would have been, a year and some change ago. I was in an intermittent fasting routine, which mine was the very bare minimum, is the 12 to 12. So I would do midnight to 12 noon. I would fast essentially, so that I could eat within noon to midnight. And I know a lot of people, like you were saying, that you do a much more regimented, extreme version of that, and a lot of people do 14 or 16 hours on, and then like the rest of the time off, like 16-hour fasts.
Yeah.
And then what would be 6 hours off, or that you could eat. And for my very minimum fast, I found that it brought me a lot more clarity and energy in the morning. It was a great routine to be on. It was hard to get into the routine, absolutely hard to get into the routine. But once I was there, it was like I didn't even feel hungry until right around noon, which was awesome. And I felt like I wouldn't get that as an extreme of a sugar crash or just crash in the afternoon that a lot of people get.
Yeah.
But then I went to Korea and I traveled, and that all went out the window, and I was never able to get back into it. Honestly, and maybe it was just part of this because I haven't tried hard enough, and maybe my lifestyle's changed a little bit. But but for the very short period of time that I was in it, I found a lot of value in it. I know you said earlier how when you were in your fast that it was almost like an altered state of consciousness.
Yes, everything is heightened, right? You're kind of like like looking for the food, if you will, and like that. Just being able to see that, like, I kind of catch myself, like, okay, bring yourself back here. Yes, you're hungry, but you're also inside of a building. You know, and you're sheltered from the elements. Be comfortable with that. Or you're not thirsty. You're not dying of thirst. You're not dehydrated. Or be thankful that yes, you have a refrigerator full of food, and you're surrounded. You're driving past all these places that have dead animals that you can eat, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it kind of makes you realize how precious food is and how abundant it is all around us. And that makes me grateful.
So actually acknowledging that just because you're hungry, you're going to eat, it makes you more grateful for it.
Yes.
That's powerful. Yeah, I know. Actually, when I was in Canada, I stopped at a little shop along the way, and there was this lady named Victoria that ran the little shop, and they actually happened to be closing. It was actually a similar story, I guess, to the restaurant that you went to. And something told me, I drove by this store, and I drove by it, and something told me to go in there. So I went in there, and it was like this lady was having a closing sale because she was closing shop after so many years. And one of the things that she was talking about was that, like, when they killed animals for pelts or whatever it may be, that, like, there was always, like, a gratitude. Because she was, I don't know if I said she was native. I don't know what tribe or anything, but that there was, like, once they made a kill, like, there was always a gratitude, like, thank you for giving your life to sustain our life. And I think that that's something that we all have been removed from by just going to Taco Bell. You know, you're not going to be saying, thank you, cow, like, for this beef taco that's probably only 30% beef. Like, there's that sense of, or not sense, but you're removed from that sense of it. So that's really powerful that you're able to experience, like, a sense of gratitude for food. Because it is so wild that we have abundance of food, right? Like, even if you're not rich by today's standards, you can still, most of us can afford some type of food.
Yeah. And it keeps us alive. It keeps us existing. And it's a miracle, man.
Yeah. So fasting is recommended then.
Yeah, give it a try. I recommend 10 hours. You know,
a 10-hour fast,
or no, 10-hour eating window.
Okay.
So I recommend doing. Actually, no. I recommend. Wait a minute. If you can do it, this would be great. If you could do 10 to 6, that will give you. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 8. If you could do 10 to 8.
10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah, that will give you a 10-hour eating window.
Or any variety of that. So, like, if you want to do
of course,
12 to 10 or something like that.
Yeah. But if you did a 10 to 8, that means you're not eating for 14 hours.
Wow. So you were saying that when you fast, that you don't really feel any kind of lack of energy or lack of clarity.
No, I find more energy. Because my digestive system isn't using energy to convert outside resources into my body. Like that, what I just said is a very energy taxing situation.
Yeah.
Where you're taking something from the outside world, putting it in you, and it becomes you. Like, that takes resources and energy.
Yeah.
So I just consolidate it into the evening when I've gotten my work done.
So when you do when you break your fast and when you have, because you were saying earlier at lunch that you do 3 meals within the like a 2-hour window, right?
Yeah.
Is that about it?
Except for today, which I have broken.
Yeah, it's my fault. How do you feel after that? After consolidating 3 meals into a 2-hour window?
Like I'm ready to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And it just so happens it's the end of the day. So I win. Right? It's the end of the day and I'm ready to go to sleep. You know, I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people that I encounter tell me that they have problems going to sleep and staying asleep.
I wonder how much mobile phones have to do with that.
Well, I think we all know the answer, right? I think we all know the answer.
I usually don't have trouble staying asleep, but falling asleep is definitely, I would put myself there too. Because it's just so easy. Like, end of the day, you're winding down. It's like, all right, let me just hop on Instagram real quick, or let me just see what's going on.
3 hours later.
Yeah. And then we can make ourselves feel better about it. Like, my phone at least has a blue light filter or whatever. Yeah. So it's like I set it to right as like about when the sun goes down. My
Same
screen.
here.
Yeah. And then it all turns orange.
Yeah.
So as you know, they say it doesn't throw off your circadian rhythm and it doesn't produce as much eye strain, which might be good, but it still is like an infinite amount of distraction available to you.
Well, man, this was great. I really admire your courage. I don't think I have it in me to go out in the wilderness by myself. That's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. You can do it in other ways, though. You can find other ways to find your own way to detox from all of it.
Yes, I agree. And I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's very insightful. I think there's a lot of good momentum here.
Yeah, definitely.
And hopefully we'll be able to carry this into a 4th episode.
Absolutely.
Sometime down the road.
For sure. Well,
Kevin Vinci, where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm probably the most active on that. Instagram is just Kevin Vinci, Vinci. I'm in a band, Salinas Pally, so you can find that through my personal Instagram page, or you can find it directly. It's SALINAS PALI, Salinas Pally Music. We're on Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Track me down.
Awesome. All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Until next time.